My pills. Gemara, Brachos 29a towards the bottom, about 7 lines up from the bottom. We start this morning the topic of Tfilas Haderech. Very interesting topic. 9:20. 9:20. Okay. Eight lines up from the bottom. 29b. Not everybody has the privilege of speaking with Eliyahu Navi. So this piece of Gemara begins, Amarle Eliyahu, the Rabbi Yehuda. Eliyahu spoke and told Rabbi Yehuda, Achva, the Rav Salah Chasida, the brother of Rav Salah, the pious one. So he told him the following. Lo sirtach. Do not become angry. Lo sakti, and it won't lead you to sin. If you're not going to become angry, that will help prevent you from sinning. Okay, and below sirdivi. Oh, without going into it, I think we can pretty much understand, be it in the kind of language a person's going to use, and be it that when he's angry, he doesn't have the choice of his faculty to make the right decisions. Okay? And when you embark on a trip, when you're leaving the community, himolech bekonecha. It's literally, Rashi learns the very last Rashi on the page, himolech tul rishus, take permission from the boss. In other words, request permission from Hashem to leave. Now, ma'i molech b'koncha, what does that mean to ask permission and go? Rav Yaakov, Rav Chizda, zu tfilas haderech. And Rav Yaakov, Rav Chizda, kol hayotze laderech, sorach lehis paleo. So it's interesting. The first opinion is to ask permission, and the second version of this is sorach lehis paleo, you are to pray tfilas haderech. Okay? So this is interesting, that the text of tfilas haderech that we have printed in most sidurim, here's where it comes from. My tfilas haderech, 4 lines up from the bottom, what is the text of Tfilas Haderech? So he wrote Samufanecha, right? Interesting. It doesn't start with Baruch. It ends with Baruch Atah Hashem, as we'll see in a moment, Shomei Tfilah, but it doesn't start with Baruch. So just as a matter of fact, before I forget, many have the custom that since it doesn't start with Baruch, therefore, what could you do? Should you do? We'll see this maybe later on. I'll see it in the Mishnah Berurah, not today. But what you should do is make a bracha right before this to create a bracha smucha l'chaverta. What does that mean? Excuse me. Throughout Shmona Esrei, the first bracha starts with a baruch, and the end of the first bracha concludes with a baruch. Baruch atah Hashem mogein Avraham. Good. Now, the second bracha starts with Ato Gibor. What a funny way to start a bracha, not Baruch Atah Hashem. So that's the rule called bracha smucha l'charvuta. If I have a series of blessings, so if the blessing are short, then each one starts with a baruch. Like the Sheva brachos under the chuppah. So the first bracha is Borei Pre'agafa, and the second one is Shakol Barolach Bodo. So the second one is going to start Baruch because the first one is a short one. And the third one will start with Baruch of Yotzera Adam because the second one is a short one. And the next one will start with Baruch because the first three are short. But after that, V'hisken lo mimenu binyan adayad. So that has more than one theme to it. Baruch atah Hashem Yotzera Adam. Then the fifth bracha is no longer going to start with Baruch. It's going to start with Sos Tosis V'Sokel HaKara, and the sixth bracha, same thing, Sameach Tisamach, and the seventh bracha should be the same way, but it's not. Interestingly, why is an interesting thing to know. Let's say we have a Sheva brachos, and then we realize, we don't have Panim Chadashos. We don't have somebody at your table who was not there either or at the wedding or at a different Sheva brachos. We have everybody who was there both at the wedding or at a different Sheva brachos. So in that case there, you don't recite all 7 blessings, you only recite the last one. And that's why the last one begins with a baruch, asher baruch. Okay? Interesting halacha. Okay, so let's get back over here. What is Tfilas Haderech? So the Gemara tells us, Ira Samufanecha, Hashem Elokai, Shetolicheni L'Shalom. Please, you shall lead me in peace. Satsideni L'Shalom. You are to literally hold me up, support me while I go on my journey, on my trip. Sismacheni L'Shalom. You should, once again, hold me up. V'satzileni, and save me. Mikaf kol oyev v'orev baderech. Rescue me from the hand of every enemy and ambush along the way. We're talking about lo aleinu, wild animals. We're talking about pirates, bandits. Traveling out of the community was unsafe. So if a person feels unsafe, I think that's an important word, then by all means, or let's even say using a different word today, anxiety, then you would have to recite Birkas Haderech.
Rabbi,
yes.
So this tefillah was probably very necessary for the times because leaving the community, that basically open you up to very unsafe conditions. But
Good.
today, let's fast forward today, getting into your car and taking a trip. You're not going to face bandits. You're not going to face this. Is it still necessary to say when you take a trip in your car to say Tfilas Haderech?
So your question is very good. And the answer I'm going to say is yes. Hold on. But we're going to see, hopefully, in a few moments, the key issue that's going to create the different questions and issues. It's almost like I think there is, on the one hand, an element of subjectivity. So I'll get to this right now. We'll talk, please God, next time about the necessity of saying Tfilas Haderech in an airplane. Now, what Mendy is saying, without his saying it, is that statistically, an airplane is safer than a car. Okay, I guess if you look lower lane, it should never happen. When it might happen, God forbid, is a calamity with an airplane. Yes, there might be more persons that might be affected, but the what's the percentage of accidents is greater in a car than it is in an airplane. So I believe Rabbi Soloveitchik, who lived in Boston, came by plane from Boston to LaGuardia each week. Excuse me. He would come depending on the week, Tuesday morning, and leave Thursday afternoon, and say Shiur Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, so initially, I'm led to believe, like anybody else, getting on an airplane, on a regular basis, but after a while, he felt routine, like somebody else getting on a bus. Now, when people get on a bus and they travel from Fairlawn to New York City, nobody makes a blessing of Tfilas Haderech on that, quote, journey, as we'll see, okay, whether it's the amount of time, whether it's the distance, whatever it is. So the Rav, at some point, felt the lack of any anxiety, and therefore he took Mendy's advice, and I don't believe he continued to recite Tfilas Haderech. So again, there might be, as we're going to talk, a big difference between flying from Boston to New York and flying from New York to overseas. Okay, so that's a significant factor that we'll see. But your answer is, I'm going to say yes, but remember, we're not simply leaving the community. The element of distance and time of how long you're traveling is going to play a major role. Okay, so now let's move on. So interestingly, I'm translating these words to save us from enemies and ambush. Basically, we're talking anxiety. Extend blessing to what I'm doing. You should please cause me to find favor in your eyes. And in the eyes of all who I encounter. Good. This is the text of Birkas Tfilas Haderech that we are, quote unquote, familiar with. Okay, let me just start the card. Okay, here we go. Amar Abaye. So Abaye says the last word on the page, le'olam, always, top of the next page, l'shatef inish nafshei b'hadei tzibura, a very important line, which applies not only to Tfilas HaDerech, but applies to all our prayers. A person, l'shatef, from the word shutfim, partners. A person should partner himself, b'hadei tzibura, together with the community, with the congregation. What does that mean? Instead of praying in the singular, right? Hechinema, what should he say? Iratzon shatolichenu, right? The first version was in the singular. You're traveling. I don't see any other traveler, so I'm going to say it in the singular. Comes along Abaye and says, no, that there is safety in numbers, that the Jew does not only pray for him, herself, he prays for others at the same time. So even though he's traveling by himself, he includes, okay, now, Emas Matzli, okay, when does he begin? All right, at what point do you start, or is there an obligation to start saying Tfilas HaDerech? Rav Yaakov, Rav Chizda, Mishor Shemahalech Baderech. In other words, I'm leaving at 10 o'clock, so I shouldn't say this prayer at 9 o'clock. I'm still at home at 9 o'clock. When should I start saying this prayer? When I begin to embark. Okay, now, should I say it when I pull out? I certainly have a way to go. And I'm still in the community. So watch. So the first thing is, and we'll have to see what that means. Is it when you are quote unquote pulling out, or pulling out of the community? It might take a half an hour to get out, depending upon traffic, at the GW bridge, etc., depending upon where you're going, until you're on a major highway and until you've left, the community. And that's going to be another factor. If there are houses all along the way and the distance between the houses, what's considered leaving the community. So the next line is the key line, and that we're going to have to focus on next time. Ad kama, until when? Now, what does it mean, ad kama? So look how Rashi learns it. Second line down, ad kama, till when, is Zmano lehispalel. Till when can you recite the prayer of Tfilas HaDerech? Okay, so the Gemara says, Rav Chizda al parsa. Until a parsa. Now, what is a parsa? A parsa is 4 mil. And what is a mil? Approximately 18 minutes of a walk. So 4 times 18 is 72. So the idea is, what does that mean, ad parsa, that you can recite it? Is it that I have until 72, quote, time it takes to walk 4 mil is approximately 72 minutes, all right? So now, does that mean I have 72 minutes into my journey to recite it, and after that, not? Or is parsa the distance that once I have traveled that amount, I can no longer say it? And that's going to be a big machlokes between Rashi, who takes the second opinion, that you have to recite it very soon after you've left, as you've embarked on your journey, as opposed to the Baal Halachos Gedolos, who says no, that it means a distance of. Then we have to talk about how they traveled in yesteryear. They traveled by foot, and or they traveled with horse and wagon, as opposed to we or traveling by train, car, plane. These are the interesting points that we will begin with next time. I've got to run because of being in the classroom at 10. Have a good day, everybody. Be well, keep warm, and Mindy and everybody else have a refuah.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Have a
Thank you, Rabbi. Drive carefully.
have a good safe trip.